Hello and welcome to Shooting the Breeze Episode 9, the formal gun podcast of WaltandPA.com. As I said, it's Episode 9. We are one away from my baby step goal of 10 episodes. After that, we'll put on the party hats and cheer and make a fuss about 25 episodes. But we're getting really close to that 10 episode goal of mine. We're getting really close to the download or view statistic goal that I'm looking for, and I'm really happy with the progression of the show. I've got some interesting news this week. I was scouring Google Reader, and you know what? Just before we get talking about anything, do you have any idea what the big deal is about this machine gun preacher? I have no idea. Maybe I'm not in the know, but it seems like every single day it is in the Google News lineup at least twice, and I've never read anything on it just because it's a movie, and I'm not sure what the big deal is, but it always makes my Google Reader news lineup for whatever reason. But outside of that little random question that came out of left field, I've got 3 pieces of news, 1 self-defense story, 2 just gun news articles. I've got some decent featured content which should spark some discussion. I've got a cigar and drink pairing for you as always, although it probably should be renamed to the cigar and coffee pairing. I'm drinking coffee again this evening. Just wasn't in the mood to break out any of the hard stuff or grab a beer, so just going with what feels right, which is coffee, but that is for later on. And the topic of discussion is going to be a USPSA match that I recently shot this weekend, and how I did and my impressions, things like that, comparing it to the other USPSA match I shot a couple of months ago. As I mentioned in previous episodes, I've only got 2 USPSA matches under my belt, so it was kind of interesting comparing one club to another in terms of how the match director set up the matches and things like that. So I gotta get my cigar lit, we'll get rolling on the news, and we'll officially get the show started, so sit tight. Well, it is time to get started with the news, and in that little show opener I made mention that there was 1 self-defense story in the news lineup today, and this is the one. This comes from STLtoday.com, the #1 St. Louis website, and it was published earlier last week. So here it goes. It says, a house sitter shot and killed a suspected burglar who kicked in the door of a home being rehabbed in the 2800 block of Magnolia Avenue early Friday, St. Louis police say. Rico Kemp, 39, was shot to death at about 12:30 a.m. Friday. Kemp lived at the 2300 block of Collett Drive in Moline Acres. The house sitter, a 48-year-old man, was not identified by police. He told detectives that he woke up after hearing someone break in the back door. He told police that he was scared for his life, so he fired 1 shot. Kemp was shot in the chest. The burglary and shooting were reported at 12:33 a.m. Friday. The 2800 block of Magnolia is in the Fox Park neighborhood. The house is in the half of the neighborhood that was recently designated as a local historic district, said Ian Simmons, president of the Fox Park Neighborhood Association. Katie O'Sullivan, a police department spokeswoman, said on Monday morning that the police determined the shooting was justified and that no charges were being sought against the house sitter. Missouri is one of several states with the Castle Doctrine, a self-defense law that says someone is justified in using deadly force if he or she reasonably believes such force to be necessary to defend against the use or imminent use of unlawful force by someone else. The law says the person feeling threatened doesn't have to retreat from a dwelling or vehicle if the intruder enters unlawfully. According to court files, Kemp has previous convictions for burglary, theft, property damage, possession of marijuana, and domestic assault. Kemp was released from parole April 7th of this year, according to Missouri Department of Corrections. Ethel Mackey said her nephew, Kemp, was a troubled soul who couldn't get off drugs. He was staying with his father in Moline Acres until recently, taking to sleeping on park benches in vacant buildings after the family urged him to give up the drugs. He just didn't want to listen, said Mackey of Radcliffe, Kentucky. She said Kemp had talked on the phone with with his father Thursday night. Kemp said that he was going to try and stay with his sister, who lives near the Mongolia Avenue home, for the night. The sister didn't answer the phone, Mackey said. I guess that's when he went to this house, she said, of the home on Mongolia Avenue. I'm thinking this is his safe haven where he'd go to sleep. He probably didn't think anybody was staying there. Property records maintained by the city show that the home is owned by Joe Freud, but Freud said that he sold the property in August to a woman named Tony Easter. Easter was out of town and unavailable for a comment, a woman who works with her said. Wendell Bird, 44, who lives nearby and was walking down Mongolia Avenue on Friday morning, told a reporter that he thinks the house sitter was within his rights to protect the property. Bird survived a stab wound to his neck last September by a man he said broke into his apartment in the 3400 block of Cherokee Street. Bird called waking up face down on his bed in a pool of blood. With the knife still lodged in his neck, Bird said he walked across the street to a short-term loan business to get help. He said he spent more than a week recovering in the hospital. If you break into my home, you're going to get one, he said. Coming into someone's house is a bit extreme. Police said no arrests were made in Bird's case. Marty Luther, 41, who lives a few houses down on Mongolia Avenue with his wife and 3 young children, said he probably would have done the same thing as the house sitter to protect the family and property. It's unfortunate someone had to lose their life for something so stupid, Luther said. Luther said that his concerns about... Luther said he has concerns about safety in the neighborhood. If it happens again, I'm looking to get out, he said. And that is the end of the news article. So it seems like a pretty cut and dry incident here. There's a homeowner is out of town. Someone's watching the house for her. He hears something go bump in the night. In particular, a door being kicked in, and he fires one shot, hits the burglar or the intruder. He goes down. He dies, and it sounds like 3 minutes later, the police are called and an incident report is made. You know, the first time I read this, I got the names a little mixed up, and I was thinking that the guy in the house that shot the intruder was the one that got stabbed in the neck, and I didn't clear it up until I just read this again. But can you imagine being in that situation? You're sound asleep, and I'm a heavy sleeper, so I mean this is kind of frightening to begin with. So, you know, this guy creeps into your house and just sticks you in the neck with a knife, and you wake up in a pool of your own blood with a knife sticking out of your neck. I mean, that's enough to scare the hell out of anyone. So any little noise you hear in the house, I got to think that you're going to be conditioned to kind of panic about it. And I know if I had an intruder, until, I don't know, it would probably take a couple of months for me to calm back down and not be oversensitive to hearing things, you know, thinking that I would have a repeat incident on my hands. But here in this situation, I think the house sitter is well within his rights. I mean, if someone comes breaking into your house at night in the dark, you don't know what their intentions are, whether or not they're just looking for a place to sleep, or they're looking to rape and pillage the family members of your home and you know, just tear your house apart. So it's unfortunate that someone had to be shot over this, but I think that the house sitter was well within his rights to protect himself. Don't go breaking into someone's house unless you're willing to face the consequences, I guess, is the moral of the story. And this guy definitely faced the consequences. One shot, too. So that's going to wrap up news article number 1. That is the only self-defense story I have for you this time around. For whatever reason, they're getting really hard to come by with my current system. I used to have pretty good luck, and the self-defense stories would turn up quite often. But lately, this is probably the first one I've seen in a couple of weeks. So I don't know whether I need to change around my search keywords or figure something else, or find a new pool for self-defense data or self-defense news articles. But so far, or as of late, this really hasn't been doing me much good. Oh, and just before I get out of here, on Monday, the police reported that the shooting was justified and that no charges would be filed. This was updated afterwards. So there's your self-defense story for the week. Alright, well, it is time for the second news story of the podcast, and here is something that I actually came across today. I got really backlogged on my Google News information, and I had a lot of catching up to do, and it looked like this is one of the big topics that popped up over the weekend, which is in regards to the ATF saying that it will be illegal to sell guns to medical marijuana users. And coincidentally, up until Saturday afternoon, I really would have had no opinion on this. Well, I mean, I guess I would have had an opinion, but it wouldn't have affected anyone that I know until just recently. So this was kind of interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and read the article, and then I'll tell you how it really doesn't relate to me, but I know someone that kind of influences my opinion on this whole thing. So this comes from ABC News, and it looks like it might be a long one, so you have to bear with me. This was published on September 28th, so I actually got a little more backlog than I thought, but the article goes on to say, firearm dealers in states that allow medical marijuana can't sell guns or ammunition to registered users of the drug, a policy that marijuana and gun rights groups say denies Second Amendment rights to individuals who are following state law. Federal law already makes it illegal for someone to possess a gun if he or she is an unlawful user or addicted to marijuana or other controlled substances. A September 21st letter from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, issued in response to numerous inquiries from gun dealers, clarifies that medical marijuana patients are included in that definition. There are no exceptions in federal law for marijuana purportedly used for medical purposes, even if such use is sanctioned by state law, said a letter by Arthur Herbert, the ATF's Assistant Director for Enforcement Programs and Services. Federal firearms licenses, or FFLs, can't sell a gun to someone who answers yes when a required form asks whether the buyer is a controlled substance user. Last week's letter also says that the licensed dealer can't sell a gun or ammunition if they have reasonable cause to believe the buyer is using a controlled substance. That includes if the buyer presents a medical marijuana card as identification, or if the buyer talks about drug use, having a medical marijuana card, or a recent drug conviction, ATF spokesman Drew Wade said Wednesday. But there are no obligations for gun dealers outlined in the letter, Wade said. We received lots of inquiries from the industry from various states of how to deal with state legislation and the federal law, he said. It's our responsibility to provide advice and guidance. The clash between state and federal drug law has led to lawsuits and criminal cases in some of the 16 states that have legalized medical marijuana use. Officials in 2 Oregon counties have said they'll appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court after the state judges said sheriffs couldn't deny concealed handgun licenses for medical marijuana patients. The Oregon Court of Appeals and the Oregon Supreme Court said that state law that authorized concealed handgun permits is separate from the federal law that outlines gun possession by drug users, and the state gun law doesn't address medical marijuana use. Federal authorities also raided dozens of medical marijuana operations across Montana this spring, chilling a once booming pot industry and leading to sweeping changes in Montana law. The Department of Justice followed up with a warning letter to political leaders in many states that federal prosecutors will pursue marijuana distributors, but not individual patients who are following the law. The letter the ATF sent out to gun dealers last week was the first reported by Lee newspapers of Montana. Pro-marijuana and gun groups said the policy clarification amounts to rescinding the gun rights for the thousands of people licensed to use medical marijuana laws. And it appears to contradict the 2009 Department of Justice memo that said the Obama administration would not pursue prosecution of individual medical marijuana users who obey state law. Besides that, the government is putting an additional burden on gun dealers to police their customers, said Montana Shooting Sports Association Gary Marbut. Page 2 of this news article. It's getting kind of long. That's not too much longer. Their business is to be merchants, not to be cops. Unfortunately, the federal licensing scheme complicates that, Marbut said. It sounds as if the ATF is expecting them to drift further into the cop role. Wade said both the 2009 memo and last week's letter were approved by the Justice Department, and he does not believe there is a contradiction in the two messages. He also said that the dealers are in good position to help prevent firearms from getting into the wrong hands. The FFLs aren't cops, but they are the front line of protection. Protecting America from criminals or people who are prohibited from possessing firearms, Wade said. A salesman at one licensed firearm dealer, Montana Outdoor Sports in Helena, said he doesn't expect much to change as a result of the letter because it's largely up to the buyer to reveal whether he or she is a medical marijuana user. Who's going to say yes to that? Asked Damon Peters, a sales associate for the store and licensed hunting guide. A lot of users of medical marijuana aren't really shooting sports enthusiasts anyway. I think we may see a sale or two lost, but I don't see anything dramatic, and that's going to affect us, he said. And that is the end of the article, and I need a sip of something to drink, and my cigar needs a relight because that was a mouthful. So I mentioned that this really doesn't relate to me, but I know someone that it may or may not affect. So on Saturday, I attended my second USPSA match. Now, the match was down in an area where I used to work, and I decided that on the way home I was going to stop in and see a friend of mine. So I sent them a text message and said, hey, if you're going to be home, I'm going to swing by your house. And I didn't hear anything back from him, so I started driving towards his house anyway. And I was passing a former employer. Now, it was a Saturday, but I was kind of glancing over at the building, and I saw the lights were on, and I saw my former employer standing near the window doing some work. So I thought, you know what, I'll stop in to say hi, and we'll talk a little bit, because it's been, I don't know, maybe a year or two since we've bumped into one another. So I go in, and we get to talking, and a former employee's name came up, and I had asked how he was doing, and it turns out he was in really bad shape for a while. He's got really bad diabetes, and my former employer was telling me that, you know, for a while it was looking really bad for him. You know, he kind of wasn't right in the head. He was getting just like sickly thin. You know, his health was really declining, and when I say kind of sick in the head, I mean it was almost as if he may give up or something, because he was telling my employer, you know, like if anything happens to me, I want you to have these tools of mine, and I want to make sure you get this and that. And it, you know, it kind of disturbed my employer quite a bit, because, you know, here's this employee of his, you know, they've known each other for years, they're friends outside of work, and you know, when he's talking about dying over his health and things like that, and my former employer tells him, you know, look, I've heard about this treatment, this medical marijuana treatment for diabetes. You know, have you looked into it? And the guy says, yeah, you know, I looked into it, but my doctor doesn't believe in it, so they're giving me all these other drugs, and you know, it just seems to be making the problem worse. So my former employer did work for a doctor in New Jersey. So he makes arrangements for this friend of ours to go see this other doctor. The friend goes to the doctor prescribes him medical marijuana, miracle cure. The doctor takes him off of all the other meds that the other doctor had him on. They prescribes him whatever the medical marijuana term is, or drug name is, and synthetic stuff. And you know, he starts gaining weight. His spirits are better, and the last I heard, he's doing really well now. You know, it's no longer kind of grim. He's gaining weight. He's eating better. He's just in better spirits. And I think it may have been a combination of the drugs that he was on and things like that. But here, from this synthetic marijuana stuff prescribed by the doctor, he seems to be doing much better now. And to think that just because his doctor prescribed him this synthetic medical marijuana, that he can't protect his family, that's kind of that's kind of frightening. So in the event that you get ill and your doctor says, look, the only thing that I would say you should do is, I want you to take this, I want to prescribe you medical marijuana, and then all of a sudden it washes away all your Second Amendment rights, I think that's that's a bit crazy. And you know, in this article, it says something about, well, you know, medical marijuana users aren't shooting enthusiasts, and usually, and you know, who's going to answer yes to the question on the form? Well, isn't falsifying that form breaking the law to begin with? So are you encouraging people to break the law and just not tell you that they're lying on the form? And it gets kind of, I think it becomes a hairy situation. And you know, here's an instance of probably a large percentage of the people on medical marijuana are looking to better their health and not trying to get high legally, or however you want to phrase it. But and to think that their Second Amendment rights are being stripped away, you know, that bothers me a bit. But I'm beginning to ramble, my throat's getting dry, and I'm stumbling over my words. So we're going to close out the second news article and move right along. Alright, well, we're here with our final news article of the podcast. And this one comes from USA Today News. And it is entitled, State Lawmakers Push to Allow Guns on College Campuses. And this is from Rick Jervis. And I'm not seeing a published date, but this was fairly recent. I think it was over the weekend. But this article goes on to say, state lawmakers across the USA are pushing a growing number of bills this year that would legalize carrying guns on college campuses, according to groups tracking the trend. This year, at least 14 states have introduced 35 bills that would allow students and faculty to carry concealed weapons on state colleges and universities, or loosen restrictions on gun bans on campuses, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Meanwhile, 2 states, Maryland and Washington, have introduced bills to prohibit guns on campuses. None of the bills have passed so far. Last year, 9 states introduced bills that would legalize gun carrying on campus, while another 9 states proposed barring the practice, according to the group. In Texas alone, 6 bills introduced this year would make it legal to bear arms on campus, says Brenda Bouch, an education policy analyst with the National Conference of State Legislatures. We're seeing more bills, she says, and there are far more bills to allow guns than to prohibit them. The emboldenment? Anyway, the effort to legalize guns on campuses comes on the heels of a ruling by the Oregon County of Appeals on Wednesday that repealed the university gun ban. In that case, a student was suspended from Western Oregon University for possessing a handgun. The court overturned the university's ban on guns, saying the state university system did not have the authority to prevent students or faculty from carrying weapons on any of its 7 universities if they were licensed to do so. The Colorado Supreme Court is deciding on another case that would allow guns on university campuses. Utah, so far, is the only state with a law allowing concealed weapons on state campuses, Bausch says. The issue of whether to allow guns on campuses has been hotly debated since the 2007 massacre at Virginia Tech, where a student opened fire on campus, killing 32 people and wounding 25. Opponents say allowing guns would not make campuses any safer for students, and the mix of guns with alcohol and drugs found on some campuses could lead to increased incidents involving guns. People legally licensed to carry a gun shouldn't give up their Second Amendment right to bear arms just because they attend a university, says Kevin Starrett, executive director of the Oregon Firearms Education Foundation, which represents the student in the Oregon court case. People who are licensed to carry guns in Oregon meet a certain criteria, Starrett says. They do not suddenly lose their minds when they step on a college campus. 2 recent U.S. Supreme Court rulings favorable to individual gun owners have emboldened states to introduce legislations that would allow guns on campuses, says Andy Pelosi, head of GunFreeKids.org, an advocacy group that opposed guns on campuses. The group has fought some form of guns on campus legislation in 23 states this year, he says. Since 2007, 65 similar bills have been defeated in 32 states. It's definitely been a very active year, to say the least, Pelosi says. So, it's kind of an interesting topic. personally, I'm of the belief that if you're a licensed gun carry, if you're licensed to carry a gun, that you should be able to carry it wherever you so choose. I mean, after all, you've gone through, you know, if you live in a state where you have to jump through hoops to get a license or a concealed carry permit, I mean, you've jumped through those hoops. You've proven that you're a safe individual. You may have had to go through training. You may have had to, you know, pay all kinds of money and just jump through random hoops or general hoops just to get your license or your carry permit. You know, I think that should permit you to carry your gun practically anywhere. I mean, I can understand federal buildings to an extent, but you know, college campuses where it's an all-adult thing, you know, I don't think there should be any. I don't think guns should be prohibited there. I know if I were in that situation and I were licensed, and well, I am licensed to carry, but if I were in that situation and I were licensed to carry a firearm, I would not want to either leave my gun in the car or leave my gun at home just so that I could go to class and spend, you know, however many hours, 5, 6, 7 hours in class and be quote unquote vulnerable or theoretically vulnerable when I'm licensed to carry a firearm. So you know, I'm happy to see that these laws are being pushed, and you know, I hope more college campuses are no longer barred, or you're no longer barred from carrying on college campuses. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So that's going to do it for the news, and I'm kind of happy to get away from it because I'm stumbling all of these news things, and for the rest of the podcast I can just throw my opinion at you and I don't need to read anything. So sit tight, we'll be right back for featured content, or right back with featured content, not for. I'm on a roll. Alright, well, this is the part of the podcast where we do featured content, which basically means I just find something of interest on the web and talk about it and tell you to go check it out for yourself. Now, over the last few weeks, I've been following the Empty Mags podcast, and on that podcast, he also does some featured content stuff. And I believe he referred me to this gun blog entitled Every Day, No Days Off, and it's a gun blog, and I added it to my RSS feed reader, and I've been keeping an eye on it here and there, and I came across this video a few weeks, or last week or 2 weeks ago, something like that, and I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to do a featured content piece on it, so I started, and I've been looking to throw it in the podcast ever since, and it's entitled Real Men Shoot Indoors Through Doorways and Sunbeams, Close Range with No Eye Protection at Wood Piles. And it's this video of this younger guy who is shooting indoors, as just as the title says, he's shooting indoors at a wood pile at close range with no eye protection on. He is wearing hearing protection though, thank God, because he's inside of a house. I can't imagine how loud that would be. But if you watch the video, it kind of looks like they're in a basement, but it's tough to say. Basically, he's standing back behind a doorway, maybe 6-7 feet, and this doorway's got this big concrete pier up top, and then these two masonry columns that come up, and beyond that is a wood pile. Now, it looks like a tree was cut down, and all of the limbs, you know, 4, 5, maybe 6 inches in diameter, were cut to length and then stacked up against this back wall, which looks like a masonry wall. And it's stacked floor to ceiling. And then once they stacked it floor to ceiling, they set up another stack, and it goes up about halfway. And halfway up, or all the way up this stack that runs halfway, he's got these vertical pieces of wood, these pieces of tree limbs that he's shooting at. He's shooting at them like a target. Now, so where he's shooting at these targets, there's only one row of wood, and then there's the wall beyond. And the sunbeam part comes in because, I don't know, 6-8 inches above this, the front stack of wood, there's a window, and there's light beaming through this window. So if it's in a basement, that window can't possibly be in a window well, because there's just too much light coming through it. Or if he's anywhere else in the house, I mean, there's all kinds of light coming through the window, which which is telling me that where he's shooting at probably isn't underground beyond that wall. I mean, I don't know what it takes to penetrate a wall, whether that's a cinder block wall or if it's a poured concrete foundation wall, or I don't know what that is back there and how strong it is, but it's kind of scary nonetheless to think that where he's shooting may possibly be above ground. So the only thing preventing that bullet from going flying around outdoors is some wood, which the bullets very well could go in between the limbs and hit the wall full force, and the wall. So it's a crazy video. First he starts shooting. It's been a little while since I watched the video, but he's shooting. Oh, actually, it tells me right here, reading through the article. He's shooting 9mm, 357 Magnum, 45 ACP, and 30-30 rifle indoors in his basement. No eye protection, just blasting away at firewood, and it's an incredible display of stupidity. I think. I would never attempt this indoors. But I don't know, for each their own, I guess. You should definitely check out this video. If anything, it's just a touch of crazy and interesting to watch. But check out Every Day No Days Off, and I will include the link to the Shooting Outdoors is for Wimps article on Every Day No Days Off. So check it out. Alright, well, it is time for featured content item number 2, and this is actually a YouTube channel. If you've been keeping an eye on my personal blog, you may have seen a regular commenter using the handle Cajun Blaze, and he's been very supportive of the site, very supportive of the podcast, of all the things that I've posted, and he adds some interesting comments throughout the blog. And last week on the podcast, I had mentioned that I was in the market for a new carry knife, and in a comment to that podcast, he mentioned that he has a YouTube channel where he talks about knives and guns and cigars. And I thought, well, that'd be pretty cool. I should check it out. So I clicked through, and I started watching some of his videos, and I thought they were really good. They're informative. There's some funny aspects to them. They're just good, entertaining, quality videos. And I started watching this one on everyday carry knives and guns. It was I think it was about a 14-minute video, and it was really interesting. He started showing some knives that he was rotating through. He showed some guns that he was rotating through. I don't remember what the knives were, but the guns, I think, were a Ruger LCP, a Ruger LC9, and a Glock 26. And he started showing some of the knives that he was carrying, and some of them were just these huge knives that look like you could skin an alligator with, and other knives look like the blades were a little smaller overall in both length and width, and they looked like something I'd be more accustomed to carrying, or a little more comfortable to carrying, compared to these other folding knives that he was showing. But there was some really interesting stuff, and I learned a lot about these knives that I was looking into, because I'm still on the fence. I don't know what to buy, and I'm getting kind of overwhelmed because I'm reading a lot of good things about a lot of different brands, and I'm not able to narrow down what I want to purchase, because there are some features in some knives that I like and some features that I dislike, and then there's the whole cost factor. So I'm still bouncing around a few ideas, and I really don't know what I want to purchase. And finding the videos from Cajun Blaze were very informative, and it was kind of an eye-opener to what certain brands offer for the money as compared to other brands. So it's a very interesting channel, lots of information there. You should definitely check it out, and it really doesn't hurt to support someone that's supporting me. So I really appreciate all of Cajun Blaze's support over the past few weeks, comments and chatting back and forth on YouTube and things like that. So it's been great having him as a commenter, and I would strongly suggest you check out his channel and all the knife stuff that he shows, because there's a whole lot of it. He does this one knife test, which when I saw it, I thought, it's kind of crazy. He stacks up three water bottles, and then he swipes it with a knife, and I'm thinking, well, what's going to happen? I mean, he's probably just going to cut a bottle, and there's going to be water all over the place. But some of these knives are slicing through these 3 water bottles with ease. I mean, he's not getting a running start and plowing into these bottles. I mean, he's just taking a quick swipe, and the tops of all the bottles are just popping right off. So it's amazing with how much of an edge some of these knives can hold. And kind of a crazy test when I saw it, but it's impressive nonetheless. So again, check out the Cajun Blaze YouTube channel, and I will definitely put a link in the show notes for you to do so. Alright, well, we're coming down the home stretch on featured content, and the last piece that I have for you is actually very last minute. I already had the featured content all lined up, and I was planning on doing this, I forget what it was called, Chicks with Guns or something like that, news piece that I came across on a major news site. And I wound up pulling it out at the last minute because I came across this video on this convenience store robbery, which was posted by Miguel over at Gun Free Zone. And after watching it, it was like, wow, you know, this is something I've got to post. It's better than that longer write-up that I saw, and it's self-defense oriented, which I always like to do. And I decided to throw it in there about 20 minutes ago. So basically, if you watch this video, what you'll see is 2 security cameras set up outside of a store and inside of a store, and there's some commentary from the shop owner on this news report, and they're switching back and forth from inside the store to outside so that you can see what's going on. And basically what it looks like is this store owner is near the door when this robber tries to bust in, and she manages to shove the door shut on him, and she drops down onto her butt and sort of pushes herself back up against the door with all her might. And outside, the robber is like throwing his body weight into the door, and he's inching it open little by little. And the camera is switching back and forth, inside, outside. So outside, the robber is throwing his weight against the door, and inside, you can see this woman, she's wedged back against the door, and she's fishing in her pocket for something. Well, eventually, she gets the gun that's in her pocket, and the robber pushes the door open and starts working his way in. And she just sort of rolls to the side, points the gun at him, and just blasts him in the chest area, in the torso. After he gets hit, he pulls himself back out of the door and runs off. And then there's some more commentary on what's going on. And then they show the aftermath. He runs out of the frame. She closes the door and secures the area, and it looks like there might have been a customer inside who's on a cell phone, and he's moving around and trying to see what's going on. It looks like he may be conveying what's going on to a 911 operator. But it's a really interesting piece of video to watch, because her situational awareness must have been really high for her to react as fast as she did, because as soon as the guy tries to barge in, she's slamming the door shut. She's getting low. She's trying to keep the door shut. And in the news article, she mentions that she was robbed a month before or something like that. So it's probably what was keeping her mentally sharp on what was going on. Having that scare earlier on, keeping that situational awareness high is probably what happened. But it's a really cool video in that she defends herself, and the robber gets what he deserves. And it's pretty interesting nonetheless, because you see everything that's going on, and the camera angles flopping back and forth inside the store, outside the store, with the security tapes, and it's pretty cool. You should definitely watch the video and see just how all this played out. It's about 2.5 minutes long, and it looks like it was cut from like a local news report or something like that. So check it out over at Gun Free Zone. I'll include the link, and comment and tell me what you think of the situation as it unfolds. Alright, well, this is the portion of the podcast where I do my cigar and drink pairing, and I kind of gave it away earlier on, telling you what the drink pairing was, and again, it's coffee. And I'm not quite sure why I've been falling back to coffee a lot more recently than any of the other adult beverages that I was planning on featuring on the show. Maybe it's because I have a limited supply of hard alcohol, and I'm all out of my favorite stuff. And the beer that I've got just really wasn't appealing to me for this particular cigar tonight. But for whatever reason, I wound up going with coffee. and I think it's just like Folgers premium stuff for the Keurig brewer. So it's nothing real fancy. You can pick it up at any grocery store. I don't remember whether it's bold or dark roast or anything like that. It's a medium bodied coffee. It's not overly heavy. It doesn't have that overly bold taste, but it goes really well with cigars. It's kind of universal, I think. And it's pairing really well with the cigar that I'm smoking now, which is the Avo Heritage. Now, this cigar I got from Buckhead Cigar down in Atlanta. And this cigar came out, I guess it was 2 trade shows ago in New Orleans. I was down there covering the show for Stogie Review. And one of the big hyped up cigars was the Avo Heritage. Now, the big draw to the Avo Heritage was it's the first Avo to come out in quite a while in the $7 to $9 price range. So you've got a premium cigar that's coming out at a more affordable price. I mean, a lot of the higher end Avos, like the limited editions, they go for $15, $16. So to see something at about around the halfway point, well, actually it's a little more than halfway, but to see something sub $10 or even sub $9 was really interesting for Avo, because it's a Davidoff product and it's usually a high dollar cigar, and it was drawing a lot of buzz at the show. Now I smoked a couple of them at the trade show and I really enjoyed them, and it wasn't until recently that I got a couple more from Mike over at Buckhead, and I started smoking them again, and I'm enjoying them quite a bit. They're medium to full bodied. They have a really thick sort of flavor. Every time I take a puff of the cigar, it kind of reminds me of a campfire, that burning hardwood kind of a smell. I find it very pleasant, and I get a lot of it out of the cigar. I find it very enjoyable. It's smoking really well. I haven't had any problems with the burn. It's holding a nice tight compacted ash. It's not making a mess. It's got a nice thin burn line. The smoke volume's good. It's nice and dense. It coats the palate well. It's easy on the palate. It's easy through the sinus. This is something I could smoke all day long, or not so much all day long, but at any point during the day. It's not going to be overly heavy first thing in the morning, and smoking it in the evening is not a problem at all. It's still got enough flavor and power to cut through, the char of the day's food. So it's a really nice cigar, and for $7 to $9, I think it's a good buy. It's a good value. And actually, I'd probably go out on a limb and say I like it better than some of the LEs I've tried at $15, $16. I think this $7 to $9 cigar is better. It's got a little bit of spice through the sinus. It's got a nice woody flavor on the palate. Just all in all, a good solid cigar. If you're interested in trying these cigars, you can pick them up at Buckhead Cigar down in Atlanta, Georgia. He is my preferred retailer. And you can reach him at Buckhead Cigar on Twitter. You can also pick up the phone and give him a call at 404-844-0400. Tell Mike you're looking for the Avo Heritage line. They come in a variety of sizes. Again, I think they're between $7 and $9. And I'm sure Mike would be more than happy to pack you up a 5-pack or a box, depending on what you're looking for, and he will get that right out to you. Again, Buckhead Cigar being my preferred retailer, who provided this cigar for this podcast, or provided the cigar that I featured in this podcast. So that is going to close out the cigar and drink pairing of the episode, and now I guess it's about time to do my topic of discussion, wrap this show up, and let you be on your way. Alright, well, it is time to do the topic of discussion for this particular podcast, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I mean, because the last USPSA match I shot is so fresh in my mind, I did it 2 days ago, I wanted to talk about that, but I wasn't sure what angle I wanted to come at it from, because when I posted the video of the match, I wound up doing a breakout of each stage and how I shot each stage. So I don't want to overlap stuff, but at the same time, this is my podcast and I can do what I want to. So maybe we'll kind of get into that, or maybe we'll just talk about the differences between this USPSA match and my first USPSA match, and how the courses varied, and how the match directors approached stage design and things like that. So Before we get into that, let's first talk about how I came to shoot this match. Now, as I mentioned, back in July, I shot my first USPSA match at Topton Fish and Game, and I enjoyed it a lot. I met a lot of nice people. I had a great time, and even though it was my first match, I feel like I did pretty well, and I enjoyed it so much that I was eager to do it again. Well, as it turns out, Topton doesn't do a pistol match every month, which I thought they did. Now, initially, I was on the fence. I didn't know whether I wanted to shoot IDPA or USPSA, and what pushed me over the edge for USPSA was that Topton is about 30 minutes from home, and they're a very active club. They're listed as doing IPSC matches constantly, or like every month. And I was under the impression that they were pistol matches, and I thought, well, you know what? I don't have to drive an hour to the closest IDPA club, so I'll shoot USPSA instead. So I went, I shot the match, I joined the USPSA organization, and I got my membership card, and you know, I was all ready to go. There wasn't a match in August because of traveling and regional matches, and I was aware of that. So when September rolled around, I found out there wasn't a match at Topton again, and that kind of sucked, so I didn't shoot a match in September. And I was looking around at some of the other clubs. Now, I got to talking to Husky Overlord over at the Pennsylvania Firearm Owners Association Forum, and he had mentioned that there was a match at this South Chester club as well as Lower Providence Rod and Game, or Lower Providence Rod and Gun Club. The timing didn't work out for the South Chester match. However, the match down at Lower Providence was going to work, so we talked back and forth, and we made arrangements to meet up at the match, and we would shoot it together. So I met up with him Saturday morning, and we started shooting and talking, and I wound up having a great time. I shot pretty well, despite it only being my second match. I'm confident that I probably placed somewhere in the middle of the pack for production class. And I brought my video camera along to my head-mounted contour camera to record the shooting, which has already been posted along with stage design. So what was the difference between the Topton match and the Lower Providence match? Because I was going into this thinking they were going to be more or less the same, thinking that, you know, USPSA is USPSA. Well, as it turns out, as I learned, that different match directors approach stage design differently. At Topton, what you'll find is a lot of long-distance stuff mixed in with targets that you can engage on the move from a variety of positions. And talking to the match director, I learned that he uses stage design like this because it mimics the larger state and regional matches, which mixes long-range stuff with close point and shoot, and you know, a lot of movement. So at Topton, what I experienced was, for instance, one stage starts you out standing in this box. When the buzzer goes off, you have to engage, I don't remember whether it was 1 or 3 steel plates at about 40 yards. The plates were maybe 12 by 12, maybe a little bit bigger. And you had to engage these 3 plates at distance before you could leave the shooting box and begin engaging the closer targets. And so after you shoot these 3 targets, you take off running down the shooting lane, and you can engage the remainder of the targets from anywhere within the shooting lane, which ran from that box all the way up to the berm. So you're taking shots anywhere from 3 yards to, you know, the 40-yard max at the first box. And that's how a lot of the stages were set up, you know, mixing distance and movement and speed and, you know, short range stuff. So when I hit Lower Providence, I was surprised because the depth of the ranges or the depths of the pistol pits were much shallower. And what that forces them to do is create kind of like intricate stages where they use a lot of angles, and they do a lot of tricky stuff with target placement. So what you may run into, like this one particular stage, the first stage I shot was set up sort of like an hourglass. They had these 2 walls that pitched in, and then there was a short section, and then there were another 2 walls that branched out. And when you start, you're all the way in the back of this hourglass shape, and there's 2 targets on either side. So what you have to do is you have to situate yourself on the edge of the boundary and lean out and around the wall to engage the targets on the left, and then move around to the right, engage the targets on the right. And you have to do a lot of leaning and awkward positions, or shooting from positions that I really didn't have any experience with, being leaned over kind of far and just sort of reaching around the barrier. Once you engage those two targets, you move forward down into this funnel, and there's a barricade that's set up that sort of blocks your view with a port in it. And what I did was that when I got to this barrier, I had to lean out again to my left. There's two steel pepper poppers at maybe 15 yards, and then there were, I think, two closer targets, which I engaged. And then moving back across this narrow barricade, there's a port, and through the port there's I think there were 4 targets, 2 close, 2 further out. And then moving further to your right, you had to lean out around the wall again, and I think there were 3 targets staggered that stepped back in distance. So I was doing a lot of leaning around things and shooting, which was a lot of fun. And then in other stages, there wasn't so much leaning, but you could only see targets from certain positions. So there might be 2 barrels stacked on top of one another, and there's a target tucked behind it. Well, you can only see that target from this extreme angle on the shooting line. So again, you find yourself leaning around just so you can see the targets behind the barrel. And as you're moving across the shooting line, there's barricades and barrels set up, and you may only have a really small window to see a target. So if you're moving too fast and you're not keeping track of what you're shooting, you can miss a target and you'll never see it again unless you backtrack and just happen to glance over and see it. So Lower Providence seems to use a lot of angles and tricky target placement that I thought was really cool. And they seem to really take advantage of those small pits, making you really work to complete the stage. So again, really cool stage design at both. I like both setups. And again, that was Saturday that I shot that match, and I'm already looking at doing 1 or possibly 2 more matches before the season closes out, when the weather gets cold and people don't do too much shooting here in Pennsylvania. The next match that I may shoot is at South Chester. I think it's South Chester Rod and Gun Club. I've never shot there before. From what I understand, it's set up similar to Lower Providence, but it's a little different. So I may see an even more different shooting stage setup, which I'm really interested in doing. And then there's another club in York that is doing a 4-stage classifier that I really want to go shoot, because the classifier stages are the same throughout all USPSA matches. And what they do is by shooting these classifiers, they can put your scores into a database and determine your shooter classification, which right now I'm U. I'm unclassified. There's D, C, B, and A, and then I think there's Master and Grandmaster or something like that. So I really want to get my 6 classification courses in, or my 6 classifiers in, so that I can get a ranking and see where I fall. When I was shooting with the shooting instructor, he had made mention that he thinks I'm probably going to place high D, low C. So I'm kind of eager to see where I would fall. I really want to hit low C, not so much high D, but low C because it's better. But we'll see how it goes. Again, I think I shot pretty well at Lower Providence, and I'm kind of, the bug has really bitten me. I really want to get out and shoot more of these matches. In November, I think the last match that I'll shoot in the season is a pistol match that Topton is going to put on. I'm pretty sure that Topton is going to do a pistol match in November, and that is probably going to be the last match that's put on at any of the area clubs. I don't know if they do anything in the winter or not, but from what I understand, most of like for instance, October was the last match down at Lower Providence, and I think they'll start back up again in March. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do in the off season. I usually don't do much shooting in the winter. Just ice and snow is really difficult to get in and out of clubs with my little sedan. So if we get heavy snow and ice this winter, I probably will do very little shooting. I'll probably try to keep up with dry fire practice just to kind of keep in shooting shape, and then hit the ground running come March when clubs start doing USPSA matches again. But one of the interesting things that came out of this USPSA match was I needed ammunition. And I usually buy ammo from Walmart because it's cheap and convenient. And what I started buying was Winchester White Box. It wasn't priced really bad. It seemed, and I never had a problem with Winchester through any of my guns. So that's what I was buying. Well, the price on Winchester went up at my area Walmart, and Federal wound up being like $2 a box cheaper. So I started buying Federal, and I've been buying it for maybe 2 months now. Well, when I went over to Walmart to pick up ammunition for this USPSA match, they had no Federal. And I was going to buy Winchester, but I saw this Remington UMC on the bottom shelf. A mega pack of 250 rounds was something like $60 for the box. And when I saw it, I'm thinking, you know what, I don't know that I really want to shoot that stuff because I think it's steel cased, lead bullets, no copper jacket or anything. And you know, I've shot that stuff before in 38 Special, and I wasn't real crazy about it, or I thought I shot that stuff in 38 Special. I wound up getting it anyway, because at these matches I usually just let the brass go. I don't collect it in between stages, and then there's people that come in and collect this stuff for classes and stuff. So I usually just let it lay, and I let the other guys have it if they want it. And since I was just going to let it lay, I thought, you know what do I care if it's steel cased? I'm not picking it up to save it to reload anyway. So I bought the stuff, I brought it home, and I opened it up, and I was kind of surprised to see all brass cased full metal jacket rounds. So it was a pleasant surprise. I must have shot Tula or Blazer or something in 38 Special and got the brands mixed up. But the Remington UMC shot really well. I had no problems with it. It shot pretty consistent, and it seemed to shoot just like the Federal that I was accustomed to shooting before this, which shot a little bit different than the Winchester, but I had gotten used to the Federal. So the 115 grain 9mm box at 250 cost me $60, and I think I found myself a new practice / USPSA ammunition. And since it's brass case, I plan on picking it up just like I do the Federal, and eventually getting into reloading, which maybe I'll start doing come winter when I'm not shooting. So couple of little things I learned, comparison between the Topton Fishing Game and Lower Providence Rod and Gun Club as far as USPSA is concerned. And that's going to close out the featured discussion topic, and or the topic of discussion, and it's about time to let you go. I think I'm getting close to my 1 hour mark. So with that said, I want to thank you for watching this episode as well as previous episodes. I appreciate all the comments, feedback, and support that I've received throughout these 9 episodes. And I hope to see you and your friends commenting and supporting me in the future. So until next time, happy smoking, happy shooting, and I will catch you later.